come from everywhere. Big cities, small towns, and everything in between. They come from different ethnic, social, and economic backgrounds. Some come from families where they were abused or neglected, while others are forced to leave, thrown out by their parents and told not to return. Others still are having problems at school or with friends. But whatever the reasons, they have two things in common. They're teenagers and they've run away from home.
At what point does a teenager decide to leave home and take to the streets? Where do they go and what's waiting for them? Throughout this program, we'll travel around Wisconsin to get answers to these questions from youth counselors and the runaways themselves. We'll also explore the options available to teens who are thinking about running away or who've already done so.
They would threaten about that they couldn't wait till I left when I was 18. And I would threaten to them, well, I'll leave before then if you don't quit and all this stuff like that. And they never ever took me seriously. They never took me seriously until I left for Wyoming, or actually for California, and we got caught in Wyoming.
So were there violent situations at home?
Oh yes, many. There was a point where my jaw was, I don't want to say broken or dislocated, but my jaw does make a noise now when I chew, and it never made that before.
As a result of what?
Yes, from him slapping me across the face when he found out that I was pregnant.
I see.
And while I was pregnant, there was a few confrontations. He had me pinned down on my stomach when I was 8 months pregnant, with my hand pinned behind my back and his knee on my back, because he didn't want me to leave the house and I wanted to leave.
It may be unfair to label all teenagers who leave home as runaways. In fact, many could be called throwaways, pushed out of their own homes or abandoned by the people who are supposed to love them.
When we're talking about people that are pushed out of their home, it could be due to a specific situation, such as a fight with a family member, a parent and a teen getting in an argument. The conflict escalates to the point where the parent says, okay, you get out of this house. I want you out of here. If you're not going to follow my rules, you leave. Okay? That could be classified as a push out. I guess there could be a parallel with thinking about maybe a person that's contemplating suicide. And a person that's thinking about suicide may feel like they kind of have their back in a corner and there's only one way out, all right? And that would be to harm themselves or to kill themselves. Well, a runaway may be in that similar situation where they're thinking the only way to improve this situation is for me to get out of here. And that, you know, would lead directly to the runaway or the push-out situation.
Feeling hurt and neglected, the runaway may show up at a friend or relative's home, or, as is too often the case, he or she ends up on the streets. Once the decision has been made to run or leave, the young man or woman faces a tough, gritty, and extremely dangerous road ahead.
end of my senior year, like I left and I went to New York. Some friends of mine had come to Madison and I was hanging out with them and they were headed towards New York. So I asked if I could go with them. So like whenever I was around 17, I moved to New York and I lived there for about 4 months on the streets. I mean, when I first got there, like they left me and it was kind of hard. I was lucky I hooked up with some friends there like the first day and they took me, you know, to like warm places to sleep and like showed me how to get food and stuff. And I kind of like learned how to take care of myself and they helped me out a lot. And I lived there in the streets and I stayed in squats like once in a while. Do you know what squats are? Squats are like abandoned buildings in New York that my friends, like we move into them and we fix them up and turn them into our homes because the city doesn't use them or people don't live in them anymore. Finally, I got out of jail and I left like a week later and I came back here for like a couple months and then I went back to New York and was living on the streets again. It was summer by that time and by that time I pretty much knew where I was going and stuff. And I lived on the streets. The squats there were kind of like, they didn't let people stay there anymore, so I was on the streets the whole time that time.
Were you by yourself or did you have some friends that you took off with?
Well, I didn't really take off with anyone. I just stayed with friends.
At their houses and
Yeah.
things? Mm-hmm. Where are you living now?
Just about wherever.
Mm-hmm. Where's been some different places that you've stayed besides friend's house?
Nowhere else really.
What do you do for food and that kind of thing?
Food, there's always, you know, like pizzas and dumpsters and like spare change.
Mm-hmm. You find on the street or do people give it to you?
Yeah, just panhandle, get some money.
Mm-hmm. Do you work? Do you have any kind of job or anything?
Kind of. I wash dishes every now and then.
Mm-hmm. Like that gives you some change in your back pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about did you leave home with enough clothes and blankets to keep you warm, or did?
I got my blanket, but I didn't really grab clothes.
Mm-hmm. Was it kind of a fast decision that you made?
Yeah.
So you didn't really have a lot of time to think about it? Yeah.
Many will end up here, confused, lonely, and scared. It's for this reason that pimps will cruise the bus stations with promises of hot food, money, and a place to stay. But it's not what it seems. According to Newsweek, nearly 1/3 of all runaways, both young women and men, will be lured into a life of prostitution within 48 hours of leaving home.
Drugs are a part of street life, and for the runaway, they're often suicide. As a way to cope with the pain and loneliness, many runaways turn to drugs, which can then lead to sharing needles. The consequences of that are frightening enough, but to many runaways on the street, it's a risk worth taking.
started using drugs and alcohol when I was 12 years old. I wanted to fit in, and I just wanted to rebel. I'd always been pretty good my whole life. And then, a little after I turned 13, I ran for the first time. And after that, it was numerous times and over and over. And after my 5th run, I was put in a shelter for teens my age, and I didn't stay still there. I ran nonstop. They brought me back twice, and I ran twice. And I got put in Waukesha County Juvenile for the first time, and it didn't scare me. I kept on running anyways, so. I was raped once. I was beat up. I gotten in fights, hurt myself, hurt other people, and I didn't care. I didn't care about myself or the people I was hurting, so it didn't matter.
We weren't getting any help because we couldn't hold her still long enough to find out why she was running. So it took a long time, many months. Even when she was court-ordered into a facility, she was gone within hours and off with her friends again.
Has the worst runaway problem in the state. It probably isn't surprising since it's the largest city in Wisconsin. But here, there are runaway problems of a different sort. It's not unusual, and in fact it's becoming more common here, for young people to leave one family and take up with another, particularly street gangs.
One time when I was leading a group here, I had a kid who told me the difference between a gang and a family. He said a gang is a bunch of people that won't stick with you, but your family sticks with you. And his gang, he called his family because they were there for him and they provided for him. And that kind of tells you that his family was not that ideal to him. But I think that to the most part, from what I've heard from a lot of teens, is that once you're in for life. But I think that they can, and I think it's a matter of social services, and it's a matter of the government providing opportunities for those youth to get themselves out of that situation.
The runaway problem is not confined to the largest cities in the state. The crisis is widespread. Even in smaller communities throughout Wisconsin, teenagers are leaving their homes.
What we try to do is work on prevention, trying to help kids look at other options. We do go into the schools in the fall. This is a real busy time for us because we go into the schools, talk to the students about problems in the homes, looking at what their options are, and try to help them with some problem solving, and end up by getting from them a list of places in the community where they could get help. The age range of the sixth graders is 11 to 12, and we target that group because they show a lot of interest in the Kids in Need program, and we do a presentation on problem solving, and that goes over really well with that age group. Also, we've talked to older kids, and by that time there's a lot more experience with running away. And again, we're trying to do some work with prevention. So we want to talk to the kids before they start running away. In the sixth grade level, kids are thinking about it, but they're not necessarily doing it.
There are as many reasons for running away as there are runaways. One major change has occurred, however, over the last 25 years. Teenagers today are running away from something or someplace. They're not running to a new or exciting life.
There's just tons of reasons. Every individual has different reasons for running away. Some of the common things that we see are abuse in the home. There's incidences of physical and sexual abuse. There's a lot, I think somewhere around 28% of the teens that come here report some alcohol abuse in the home. So that's a large factor in why teens come here. I don't think many teens choose to live on the street for the sake of wanting to be on the street. Sometimes teens will make decisions where they figure they'll be able to get away with like partying with their friends for a while or hanging out. Maybe they have a bad influence and are really impressionable and things are kind of bad at home, so it seems really attractive to be out on the street for a time. They soon find out that it's not, and it's not fun. The fun doesn't continue, and you get into the reality of not having a place to go and being cold and that sort of thing.
As the years pass, the average age of a runaway drops. 5 years ago, the typical runaway was 16. Today, however, according to the National Runaway Switchboard, the average age is only 14 and a half.
In cities and towns throughout the state, there are many services runaways could utilize. Free clinics, runaway shelters, churches, but most don't, either because they just don't know about them or they're afraid of being turned in.
So you mainly expected just to go from friend's house to friend's house and
Yeah.
until you ran out of friends, or?
No, I've always, go back or whatever. But a couple times I would go in, get my dad arrested for child abuse, keep on getting him on the record, see if they,
Were there ever situations where you ran out of places to go? Were you ever out on the street, actually?
Yes, I was for about a week.
For
I didn't
about
have
a
nowhere
week.
to go. And
How did you survive?
I would be just like out in the streets walking around, and like during the day I'd be going to my friends, eat some of their food.
Where did you sleep?
I didn't really sleep. I was just walking around. If I did sleep, I'll be like, out on a bench somewhere, laying down, resting.
So where did you go when you left?
I met this guy and I lived with him for a while. And he had his own place.
What was that situation like? Was it good?
Well, he would hit me a couple times too, and we'd be arguing. And
So it wasn't good.
no, it wasn't.
And you left that situation as well?
Not really. He went to jail, and I had no place to go, and my dad wouldn't let me come back live with him, and I called Raft, and they gave me a place to stay for a while till I got a hold of my mom.
I'm standing in front of a safe place. Wherever you see this sign, it's a place a runaway can go to seek immediate shelter. Inside, the store manager will assist the runaway not by calling police and not by calling their parents, but by calling a counselor for a confidential talk. So what exactly does it mean to be involved with a safe place?
Well, what a safe place is, it's a place where teens that are in trouble can come. And they would speak to the person behind the register or one of the waitresses here and let them know that they're in trouble. Then the waitress would pick up the phone and call a counselor or a local agency. And that would not be the police or the parents or anything like that. It would be a counselor that would come directly here and speak with the teen, and they would together work out some kind of a solution for the problem.
Running away is not exciting, and it's not an adventure, but sometimes it's a necessity. If a teen is facing an abusive situation at home, mere survival may mean leaving. But that doesn't mean a teen should hop on a bus and head nowhere. Help is available.
If you or a friend are having problems at home or at school and are considering running, stop. There are other options. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, a teacher, or a counselor. Just don't keep it inside.
In just a moment, you'll see some phone numbers. Write them down and keep them with you. If not for yourself, then for a friend or someone you know who might not see this video. And please use them. One call will prove valuable, maybe even a lifesaver.